How can one careless kiss at a party unravel an entire marriage in front of everyone? What begins as a little nothing spirals into public papers, lost trust, and a husband's cold, lawful revenge. Can I still call him the villain when the delivery of legal documents makes my secrets official? The music thumped through Simon and Carla's apartment as I adjusted my red dress in their hallway mirror. I looked good tonight, better than I had in months. At 34, I still had it, even if my husband Jonas seemed to forget that fact most days. Araminta, you made it. Simon Bell appeared beside me, his designer cologne mixing with the scent of wine and laughter from the living room. At 35, Jonas's best friend had that easy charm that made people gravitate toward him. Unlike my methodical, predictable husband. Wouldn't miss it, I smiled, accepting the glass of wine he offered. Where's Jonas? Corner by the bookshelf, probably discussing code optimization with someone. Simon laughed. You know how he is at parties. I did know. Jonas would find the quietest corner, nurse one beer all night, and check his phone every 15 minutes like he had somewhere more important to be. Meanwhile, I'd be stuck making small talk with his boring software engineer friends, pretending to care about their latest projects. The apartment buzzed with energy. Carla had outdone herself with the decorations, string lights casting a warm glow over the crowd of 30-something professionals. I spotted my co-worker, Nate Evans, near the kitchen island, already animated in conversation with a group I didn't recognize. Araminta, Nate waved me over. Come meet everyone. This is the office administrator I was telling you about, the one with all the best stories. I felt a flush of pleasure. Finally, someone who appreciated my personality. I joined their circle, immediately falling into the rhythm of their conversation. These people laughed at my jokes, asked follow-up questions, treated me like I was interesting. 2 glasses of wine later, I felt lighter than I had in months. The group had grown, with Simon drifting in and out of our conversation. Each time he returned, he'd make some witty comment that had everyone laughing, including me. You're hilarious, I told him during a lull in conversation. Jonas never tells jokes like that. Jonas has many talents, Simon replied diplomatically, but his eyes held mine a beat longer than necessary. He's just more reserved. Reserved is one word for it, I muttered, then immediately felt guilty, but the wine made everything feel less serious, less permanent. Across the room, I caught sight of Jonas, leaning against the bookshelf exactly where Simon had predicted. He was listening to some guy in a polo shirt explain something with elaborate hand gestures. Jonas nodded politely, but I could see the glazed look in his eyes from here. He looks thrilling, Nate whispered in my ear, following my gaze. Stop, I laughed, but didn't move away from him. The night progressed in a blur of conversations and compliments. People kept telling me how funny I was, how refreshing my perspective seemed. When had Jonas last called me refreshing? When had he last looked at me the way these people did, like I was worth listening to? Around 11, someone suggested moving the party to the balcony. The cool night air felt good against my flushed cheeks as we crowded onto Simon and Carla's small outdoor space. The city lights twinkled below us, making everything feel magical and possible. This is nice. Simon appeared beside me at the railing. Most of the party had stayed inside, leaving just a few of us out here. It is, I agreed, very aware of how close he was standing. I needed this. Things have been so routine lately. Routine can be good, he said carefully, but everyone needs a little excitement sometimes. I turned to look at him, and suddenly the space between us felt charged. He was Jonas's best friend, had been since college. I'd known him for almost as long as I'd known my husband, but tonight, with the wine and the attention, and the way he was looking at me, he felt like someone entirely new. Araminta, he said softly. I don't know who moved first. Maybe we both did, but suddenly his lips were on mine, and I was kissing him back, and for a moment, everything else disappeared. The kiss lasted maybe 10 seconds, but it felt both eternal and over too quickly. We broke apart at the sound of the sliding door opening. Carla stepped onto the balcony, her face immediately shifting from casual to shocked as she took in the scene. "Oh," she said, her voice flat. "I was just checking if anyone needed drinks." "Carla, we were just—" Simon started. "I can see what you were just doing." She cut him off, her eyes moving between us with growing anger. "Maybe you should go back inside, Araminta." The spell broke completely. Reality crashed back in waves of mortification and panic. What had I done? Jonas was inside. Had he seen? Did anyone else witness it? I stumbled back through the sliding door, my heart pounding. The party continued around me, but everything felt different now. Conversations seemed to pause as I passed, though maybe that was paranoia. I found Jonas exactly where I'd left him, still talking to polo shirt guy. He looked up as I approached, and for a terrifying moment, I thought I saw something different in his expression, but then he smiled his usual polite smile. "Ready to head home?" he asked. "I have an early meeting tomorrow." "Actually, yes," I said quickly. "I'm getting tired." We made our rounds saying goodbye. When we reached Simon, he couldn't quite meet my eyes. "Thanks for having us," Jonas said, shaking his best friend's hand with no apparent awareness that anything had changed. "Of course," Simon replied. "We should do this again soon." But his voice sounded hollow, and when Carla appeared beside him, her smile was arctic. The ride home was quiet. Jonas drove with his usual careful attention to speed limits and turn signals. I stared out the passenger window, my mind racing. Had Carla told him? Would she tell him? What exactly had she seen? "Fun party," Jonas said as we pulled into our driveway. "Yeah," I managed. "Really fun." Inside our suburban home, everything looked exactly the same, but I felt like a stranger. Jonas went through his usual nighttime routine, checking the locks, setting out his clothes for tomorrow, plugging in his phone to charge. "That was nice of Simon and Carla to host," he said as we got ready for bed. Though Simon seemed a little off tonight, distracted. My stomach clenched. "Did he? I didn't notice." Jonas shrugged. "Probably work stress. He mentioned some big client presentation coming up." Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. I nodded, not trusting my voice. In the bathroom mirror, my lips still felt swollen from the kiss, but Jonas didn't seem to notice anything different about me at all. Later, lying in bed listening to his even breathing, I stared at the ceiling and tried to process what had happened. It was just a kiss, a stupid, meaningless moment of poor judgment fueled by wine and attention. It didn't mean anything. But even as I told myself that, I knew something had shifted tonight. And from the way Carla had looked at me, I suspected the consequences were just beginning. Monday morning arrived with the subtlety of a sledgehammer. I woke up with a wine headache and the creeping dread that comes with remembering you've done something stupid. Jonas was already gone. He always left early on Mondays for his team meetings. I made coffee with shaking hands, checking my phone obsessively. No messages from Simon. No angry texts from Carla. Maybe I'd gotten lucky. Maybe she'd decided to let it go. That hope died the moment I walked into my office. Well, well, well. Nate Evans spun around in his desk chair, grinning like the Cheshire Cat. "Look who's finally living a little." My blood turned to ice. "What are you talking about?" "Oh, come on. The kiss heard round the party. Simon Bell is a lucky man." He waggled his eyebrows suggestively. It was nothing," I stammered, looking around to see who else might be listening. "Just a stupid mistake." "Mistake?" Nate laughed. "Honey, that man has been making eyes at you for years. Jonas is sweet and all, but he's about as exciting as watching paint dry. You deserve some fun." "Keep your voice down," I hissed, but part of me felt a traitorous flutter of pleasure. Had Simon really been making eyes at me for years? Had other people noticed? The morning crawled by. I couldn't concentrate on anything, jumping every time my phone buzzed. Finally, around 11, I got the text I'd been dreading. Carla. We need to talk. Coffee at 1. My hands trembled as I typed back, of course. Everything okay? She didn't respond. The cafe was crowded with the lunch rush when I arrived. Carla was already there, sitting at a corner table with her arms crossed. At 33, she was usually warm and bubbly, the kind of person who remembered everyone's birthday and organized group gifts. Today she looked like she wanted to murder me. Sit, she said without preamble. I sat. I've been awake all night thinking about what I saw, she began, her voice low and controlled. My husband kissing my friend on my balcony at my party. Carla, I'm so sorry. It was a mistake. A mistake? Her voice rose slightly before she caught herself. A mistake is bumping into someone. A mistake is wearing the wrong shoes. What you did was a choice. It just happened. We were talking, and the wine, and what? You accidentally fell onto his mouth? I flinched. It didn't mean anything. It was just a moment of poor judgment. Poor judgment. She repeated the words like they tasted bad. Do you know what poor judgment is, Araminta? Poor judgment is me not telling Jonas what I saw the second it happened. My stomach dropped. You didn't tell him? Not yet, but I'm thinking about it. She leaned forward. Simon came clean to me yesterday morning, told me everything. How you've been flirting with him for months, how you complain about Jonas being boring, how you made it clear you were available. That's not true. But even as I said it, I wondered if it was. Had I been flirting? Had I been complaining about Jonas more than I realized? Isn't it? Carla's eyes were hard. Simon felt so guilty he could barely look at me. He said you've been sending signals for a while now. He kissed me too, I said defensively. It wasn't just me. Oh, I know, and we'll be dealing with that. But right now, I'm talking to you. She pulled out her phone. I took some pictures last night, the party, the balcony setup. Funny thing about phone cameras, they timestamp everything. I felt sick. What do you want from me? I want you to stay away from my husband. I want you to stop playing the victim. And I want you to figure out what you're going to tell Jonas before someone else does. Are you threatening me? I'm giving you a chance to do the right thing. She stood up. But if I hear that you're spinning this as Simon's fault, or that you're playing innocent, then Jonas gets a very detailed phone call. She left me sitting there, coffee untouched, hands shaking. The afternoon was torture. I couldn't focus on work, couldn't stop checking my phone, couldn't stop replaying the conversation with Carla. When 5 o'clock finally came, I practically ran to my car. Jonas was already home when I arrived, which was unusual. He was sitting at the kitchen table with his laptop, but he closed it when I walked in. How was your day? He asked, and something in his tone made me look at him more carefully. Fine. Busy. How was yours? Interesting. He leaned back in his chair. I had lunch with Simon today. My heart stopped. Oh? He seemed upset about something, kept apologizing for the party, saying he hoped he hadn't embarrassed himself. Jonas's eyes never left my face. I told him I didn't notice anything unusual, did you? This was it, my chance to come clean, to control the narrative before Carla or Simon or anyone else could spin it. But looking at Jonas's calm, expectant face, I couldn't do it. No, I heard myself say. Nothing unusual at all. Jonas nodded slowly. That's what I figured. Simon's always been dramatic about these things. He opened his laptop again. Oh, and your mother called. She wants to know if we're free for dinner this weekend. Sure, I managed. That sounds nice. But as I went upstairs to change clothes, I caught sight of Jonas in the reflection of the hallway mirror. He wasn't looking at his laptop screen. He was watching me. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling while Jonas slept beside me. Every sound seemed amplified. The house settling, a car passing outside, the whisper of Jonas's breathing. Had Simon really told him everything at lunch? Was Jonas testing me? Or was I just paranoid? My phone buzzed with a text. I grabbed it, hoping it was Carla saying she'd changed her mind, or Simon saying he'd fixed everything somehow. Instead, it was Nate. Heard through the grapevine that Carla Bell is telling people her marriage is in trouble. Wonder why? I stared at the message in horror. If Nate knew, how many other people knew? How long before it got back to Jonas through someone else? I deleted the text and put my phone face down on the nightstand, but sleep didn't come. Instead, I lay there planning what I'd say when the truth inevitably came out, practicing explanations that sounded increasingly hollow even to me. It was nothing, I'd tell Jonas. Just a stupid mistake that meant absolutely nothing. But as the hours ticked by, I started to wonder if nothing was going to be enough. The next few days passed in a haze of anxiety and forced normalcy. Jonas went to work, I went to work, we had dinner together and watched television and went through all the motions of our regular life. But something had fundamentally shifted. Jonas was different. Not angry, not confrontational, just distant. He still asked about my day, still kissed me goodbye in the mornings, still went through all the familiar routines. But there was a quality of watchfulness about him that I'd never noticed before. Wednesday brought the first real crack in my carefully maintained facade. Araminta, my supervisor Linda, called me into her office just before lunch. We need to discuss something. I followed her in, my palms sweating. Linda was in her 50s, no nonsense, the kind of woman who didn't waste time on small talk. I received an unusual email yesterday, she began, settling behind her desk. From someone claiming there were inappropriate incidents at a recent social gathering involving you. My mouth went dry. What kind of email? The kind that makes HR nervous. Linda pulled up something on her computer screen. Now, normally I wouldn't give much credence to anonymous workplace gossip, but this person provided very specific details. Dates, times, witnesses. Linda, I can explain. Can you? Because according to this email, you were publicly intimate with a married man at a party, and it's starting to affect workplace morale. Apparently, people are talking. I thought of Nate's knowing smirks, the way conversations seemed to pause when I walked by lately, the sidelong glances from co-workers I'd barely noticed before. It was just a kiss, I said quietly. One kiss. It didn't mean anything. Whose husband? The question hung in the air like a blade. My husband's best friend. Linda was quiet for a long moment. Araminta, I'm not here to judge your personal life. But when personal drama starts affecting the workplace environment, it becomes my problem. I'm going to need you to be very careful about your professional conduct going forward. Of course, absolutely. And if the situation escalates, if there are more emails, more disruptions, we'll need to have a different conversation. I nodded, not trusting my voice. That's all for now. But Araminta, whatever's going on in your marriage, don't let it follow you to work. I spent my lunch break in my car, hands shaking as I tried to call Simon. It went straight to voicemail. I tried again, same thing. Finally, I texted, "We need to talk. Someone sent an email to my work." The response came back immediately. "Can't talk. Carla monitoring everything. Sorry." Sorry. That's all I got. One word, and suddenly I was completely alone in this mess. That evening, Jonas was already home again when I arrived. This was becoming a pattern, him being home early, positioned at the kitchen table with his laptop, like he was waiting for me. "How was work?" he asked without looking up from his screen. "Fine." I hesitated. "Jonas, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Have you talked to Simon lately? Since the party, I mean." Now he did look up, and his expression was unreadable. "Why do you ask?" He seemed upset that night. I wondered if everything was okay with him and Carla. "Funny you should mention that." Jonas closed his laptop with deliberate precision. I actually heard some interesting things about that party today. My blood turned to ice. Oh, Marcus called me at work. You remember Marcus from my old job? He was at Simon's party too. Jonas leaned back in his chair. He mentioned seeing something unusual on the balcony. This was it, the moment I'd been dreading. But instead of relief, I felt a surge of desperate anger. Why was everyone so determined to make a big deal out of nothing? Why couldn't people just mind their own business? Jonas, I can explain. Can you? His voice was still calm, but there was steel underneath now. Because I've been waiting for you to explain for almost a week. You knew. The words came out as a whisper. I've suspected. Simon's been avoiding my calls. Carla won't look at me when we run into each other at the grocery store. You've been jumpy as a cat. And now Marcus confirms what I already figured out. He stood up. So yes, Araminta, I know my wife kissed my best friend at a party. It was nothing. The words exploded out of me. One stupid kiss that lasted 10 seconds. It didn't mean anything. Nothing. He repeated the word thoughtfully. That's interesting, because it seems to mean quite a lot to everyone else. Your co-workers are talking about it. My father thinks I should see a lawyer. Simon's marriage might not survive it, but to you, it's nothing. It was a mistake. I was drunk and he was being nice to me, and you were just sitting in the corner ignoring me like always. So this is my fault. That's not what I said, isn't it? Jonas walked to the kitchen counter, putting distance between us. I'm boring, so you kissed my best friend. I don't pay enough attention to you, so you humiliated me in front of our friends. I work too much, so you decided to blow up our marriage. I didn't blow up our marriage. It was one kiss. One kiss that you lied about for a week. One kiss that you're still calling nothing, even though it's destroyed 2 friendships and gotten you in trouble at work. His voice never rose, never lost that terrible calm. One kiss that you would never have told me about if other people hadn't seen it. I stared at him, and for the first time since the party, I saw my husband clearly, really clearly. The hurt in his eyes that he was trying so hard to hide. The careful way he was holding himself, like he might break apart if he moved too quickly. Jonas, I'm sorry, I whispered. I'm so sorry. Are you? Or are you sorry you got caught? I opened my mouth to protest, but the words wouldn't come, because suddenly I wasn't sure of the answer myself. I'm going to stay in the guest room for a while, Jonas said quietly. I need some space to think. Jonas, please. And Araminta, next time you want to tell someone our marriage is boring, maybe tell me first, instead of my best friend, right before you kiss him. He left me standing in the kitchen, surrounded by the remnants of our normal life. The coffee maker we'd gotten for our wedding, the refrigerator covered with our daughter Ellery's artwork, the table where we'd shared thousands of meals. But normal was over. I could feel it in the silence that followed Jonas's footsteps up the stairs, in the careful click of the guest room door closing, in the way the house suddenly felt too big and too empty all at once. I pulled out my phone and called my mother. Mom, can you talk? I think I've made a terrible mistake. My mother Sally arrived the next morning with coffee and the kind of determined optimism that had gotten her through my father's death 5 years ago. At 61, she still believed most problems could be solved with honest conversation and homemade cookies. Tell me everything, she said, settling at my kitchen table like she was prepared for a siege. So I did. I told her about the party, about Simon, about the kiss that was supposed to be nothing, but had somehow become everything. I told her about Jonas sleeping in the guest room, about the email to my work, about Carla's threats and Simon's silence. Oh, honey, Mom said when I finished. What were you thinking? I wasn't thinking. That's the problem. It just happened. Things like that don't just happen, Araminta. There are always choices leading up to them. She stirred her coffee thoughtfully. Have you been unhappy? In your marriage, I mean. I started to give her the easy answer, the one I'd been telling myself, that I was happy, that it was just a moment of poor judgment, that everything was fine. But sitting there in my kitchen with my mother's patient eyes on me, the truth felt heavier. Sometimes, I admitted, he's a good man, a good father. But he's so predictable, Mum. Every day is exactly the same. Work, dinner, television, bed. He never wants to do anything spontaneous or exciting. He never looks at me like I'm interesting anymore. And Simon did? I flushed. That night, yes, he made me feel seen, like I was worth paying attention to. Mum was quiet for a long moment. Sweetie, marriage isn't a performance. It's not about being entertaining or exciting every single day. It's about building a life together, being partners. I know that, but is it wrong to want more, to want to feel alive sometimes? No, but kissing your husband's best friend isn't the way to get it. Before I could respond, we heard a car in the driveway. Through the window, I saw Jonas's sedan pulling in. He was home early again, another break in his usual pattern. I should go, Mum said, but Jonas was already walking through the front door. Sally, he said, nodding politely, good to see you. Jonas, her voice was carefully neutral. How are you holding up? I'm fine, just came home to pick up some files. But instead of heading upstairs, he sat down at the table with us. Actually, I'm glad you're here. I wanted to ask you something. I felt a chill of premonition. Did Araminta tell you what happened at the party? Jonas asked. Mom glanced at me, then back at him. She did. And what did she tell you exactly? Jonas, I started, but he held up a hand. I'm curious about the version of events your daughter is sharing with people. Mom looked uncomfortable. She said it was a mistake, one kiss that didn't mean anything. Nothing, Jonas said, and I heard that word again, the one that seemed to cut him every time I used it. Did she mention that she's been complaining about our marriage to Simon for months? That she told him I was boring and inattentive? That she's been flirting with him at every social gathering we've attended this year? That's not true, I protested. Isn't it? Because Simon told me all of this yesterday. He called to apologize, really apologize this time, and he told me everything. How you've been sending signals, how you've made it clear you were unhappy with me, how that kiss didn't come out of nowhere. I felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. Simon had betrayed me completely, told Jonas things I'd said in confidence, twisted innocent conversations into something calculated and deliberate. He's lying, I said desperately. He's just trying to make himself look better. Is he? Because I've been thinking about it, and I remember things differently now. The way you always found excuses to talk to him at parties. The way you laughed a little too hard at his jokes. The way you compared us constantly. Him being so funny and charming, me being so serious and dull. Jonas, please. I've been boring you for years, haven't I, Araminta? You've just been too polite to leave. The accusation hung in the air like a physical thing. Mom looked between us with growing alarm. Maybe I should go, she said quietly. No, stay. Jonas's voice was still that terrible calm. I want witnesses for this conversation, because I have a feeling my wife is going to have a very different version of it later. What's that supposed to mean? I demanded. It means I've learned not to trust your version of events. He pulled a folder from his briefcase and set it on the table. I've been doing some research this week, talking to people, gathering information, trying to understand how we got here. Research? The word came out as a croak. Did you know Marcus took pictures at the party? Lots of pictures, including some of you and Simon on the balcony. He opened the folder and pulled out several printed photos. The timestamps are very interesting. You were out there together for almost 20 minutes before the actual kiss. 20 minutes of very intimate conversation. I stared at the photos in horror. They showed Simon and me standing close together, his hand on my arm, both of us leaning in like conspirators. To an outside observer, we looked like exactly what we were. Two people flirting shamelessly while my husband sat inside, oblivious. These don't prove anything, I said weakly. Don't they? Because they sure look like proof to me. Proof that this wasn't some spontaneous moment of poor judgment. proof that you planned it. I didn't plan anything. Didn't you? Because Nate Evans has been very talkative this week. He told several people that you've been complaining about me for months, that you said I was holding you back, that you deserved better, that you were thinking about what else might be out there. I felt sick. Had I said those things? Maybe. Probably. But they were just complaints, just venting frustration. Everyone complained about their spouse sometimes. Nate exaggerates everything, I said. Does he? Because 3 different people have told me variations of the same story. How you've been unhappy, how you've been looking around, how you've had your eye on Simon for a while now. Mum was staring at me with an expression I'd never seen before, disappointment mixed with something that looked like shame. Araminta, she said quietly, is this true? It's not what it sounds like, I said desperately. Yes, I've been frustrated sometimes. Yes, I've wondered what else might be out there. But that doesn't mean I plan to cheat. Cheat. Jonas repeated the word like he was tasting it. Interesting choice of words, because you've been very careful not to call it that before now. I realized my mistake immediately. In all my explanations, to Carla, to my mother, to myself, I'd called it a kiss, a mistake, a moment of poor judgment, never cheating. Because cheating was serious, cheating was marriage ending, cheating was something other people did. One kiss isn't cheating, I said, but the word sounded hollow even to me. One kiss that was the culmination of months of emotional infidelity, Jonas corrected. One kiss that you lied about for a week. One kiss that you would never have confessed to if you hadn't been caught. He stood up and closed the folder. I'll be staying at my father's house for a while. I need space to think about what I want to do next. Jonas, wait. And Araminta, the next time you want to tell people how boring and inadequate your husband is, maybe consider telling your husband first, instead of his best friend. He left us sitting there in the wreckage of my carefully constructed narrative. Mum was quiet for a long time, staring at her coffee cup like it held answers. Is it true? She finally asked. What he said about the complaining, the flirting. I wanted to lie. I wanted to maintain the fiction that I was the victim here, that Jonas was overreacting, that everyone was making too big a deal out of nothing. But looking at my mother's disappointed face, I couldn't do it anymore. Maybe, I whispered. Some of it. I didn't mean for it to go anywhere. I was just frustrated. Oh, honey. Mom reached across the table and took my hand. What have you done? For the first time since the party, I started to cry. Not the angry, defensive tears I'd been fighting all week, but deep, wrenching sobs that came from somewhere I'd been trying not to look. Because Jonas was right, about all of it. The flirting, the complaining, the months of small betrayals that had led up to that kiss. I had been looking around, wondering what else was out there, treating my marriage like a prison instead of a partnership. And now I was about to lose it all. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of humiliation and desperate damage control. Jonas moved in with his father Marcus, taking only a suitcase and his laptop. Our 7-year-old daughter Ellery started asking why Daddy wasn't sleeping at home anymore, and I found myself giving increasingly elaborate explanations about work projects and temporary arrangements. But the real nightmare was everywhere else. At work, the whispers followed me down hallways. Conversation stopped when I entered rooms. Linda called me in for another meeting, this time with HR present, to discuss maintaining professional boundaries and workplace conduct expectations. Someone had forwarded screenshots of my social media post from the party, including one where Simon and I were laughing together in the background while Carla looked on with obvious displeasure. The optics are problematic, Linda explained in that careful HR speak that meant my job was hanging by a thread. At Ellery's school, the other parents suddenly had urgent phone calls to take when I approached. The mum group chat that I'd been part of for 2 years went suspiciously quiet whenever I posted anything. I realized that Carla had been a central figure in that social circle, and her version of events was spreading like wildfire. But the worst part was my family's reaction. "I'm ashamed of you," Mum said during one of our increasingly tense phone calls. "I raised you better than this." "It was one kiss, Mum. One mistake." "It wasn't one mistake, Araminta. It was a series of choices that led to that kiss. And instead of taking responsibility, you're still trying to minimize it." Even my sister called from California, having heard the news through the family grapevine. "What were you thinking?" Jessica demanded. "Jonas is a good man. Do you know how hard it is to find a good man?" "I know he's good," I said miserably. I felt invisible, like I was disappearing into this suburban mom role and nobody saw me anymore." "So you decided to blow up your marriage for attention?" When she put it like that, it sounded pathetic. And maybe it was. The breaking point came on a Thursday afternoon. I was picking Ellery up from school when I saw Carla in the parking lot. For a moment, I considered avoiding her entirely, but she spotted me before I could escape. "Araminta," her voice was ice cold, "we need to talk." "Carla, I know you're angry." "Angry doesn't begin to cover it." She stepped closer, and I could see the exhaustion in her face, the weight she'd lost, the way her usually perfect appearance had become slightly frayed around the edges. "Do you know what you've done to my marriage?" "Simon kissed me too," I said defensively. "It wasn't just me." "Simon is an idiot who got caught up in your little midlife crisis fantasy. But you? You knew exactly what you were doing." Her voice dropped to a whisper that was somehow more frightening than shouting. "You've been working on him for months, making him think you were unhappy, that Jonas didn't appreciate you, that maybe he could be your knight in shining armor." "That's not true." "Isn't it? Because Simon told me everything, Araminta. Every conversation, every look, every little comment you made about how boring your life was. You used him to make yourself feel better, and you didn't care what it cost anyone else." I wanted to argue, but the words died in my throat. Because she was right. I had been doing those things, even if I hadn't admitted it to myself at the time. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "Sorry doesn't fix anything. Simon and I are separated. He's staying at his brother's place while we figure out if our marriage can survive this. Your husband is talking to divorce lawyers. Your daughter is asking everyone why her parents don't live together anymore." Carla's eyes were bright with unshed tears. "All because you were bored." She walked away before I could respond, leaving me standing in the school parking lot, feeling like the worst person in the world. That night, after Ellery was asleep, I called Jonas. He answered on the fourth ring. "What do you need, Araminta?" "I need to talk to you. Please, can you come over?" "I don't think that's a good idea." "Jonas, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for everything. I know I messed up, but we can fix this. We can go to counseling. We can work through it. Can we? Because I'm not sure we can come back from this." "It was one kiss." "It wasn't one kiss." For the first time since this whole nightmare started, Jonas raised his voice. "It was months of you checking out of our marriage. It was you telling my best friend that I was inadequate. It was you making me look like a fool in front of everyone we know. It was you lying to my face for a week and then only admitting the truth when you got caught. I know I handled it wrong." "You handled it wrong? Araminta, you had an affair." "It wasn't an affair. It was one kiss. An emotional affair that culminated in a physical one. Do you think it matters that you only kissed him once? Do you think that makes it hurt less?" I was crying now. Ugly, desperate tears that made it hard to speak. I never meant for any of this to happen. But it did happen, and now I have to figure out if I can ever trust you again, if I can ever look at you without wondering what you're really thinking, who you're really wishing you were with. You can trust me. I swear, nothing like this will ever happen again. How can I believe that? You spent months lying to me about your feelings, about your friendship with Simon, about your level of satisfaction with our marriage. Why should I believe you're telling the truth now? I didn't have an answer for that. "I need more time," Jonas said finally. "I need to think about what I want to do." "What does that mean?" "It means I'm talking to a lawyer tomorrow. It means I'm exploring my options. It means I'm done pretending this is something we can just get over. The line went dead, and I sat in my empty house, surrounded by the life I'd taken for granted and might be about to lose forever. The next morning brought a new humiliation. I woke up to 17 missed calls and 43 text messages. Apparently, someone had posted the story to a local Facebook group, not naming names, but providing enough details that anyone who knew us could figure out the players involved. The post had been shared dozens of times, with hundreds of comments ranging from sympathetic to savage. Most fell into the latter category. Some women don't know how good they have it until it's gone. I feel sorry for the husband and kids. They're the real victims here. Play stupid games, win stupid prizes. My phone rang. It was Linda from work. Araminta, I need you to take some personal time. This situation has become disruptive to the workplace environment. Are you firing me? I'm strongly suggesting you take a leave of absence while things settle down, with pay for now, but this can't continue. I was being pushed out of my job. My marriage was over. My social circle had evaporated. My family was ashamed of me. And it was all because of one kiss that was supposed to be nothing. But as I sat in my empty house, scrolling through the brutal comments from strangers, I finally understood what Jonas had been trying to tell me. It was never about the kiss. It was about everything that led up to it, and everything that came after. It was about the choices I'd made, the lies I'd told, and the life I'd carelessly thrown away because I thought I deserved more excitement. Now I was about to find out exactly how exciting a public divorce could be. 3 weeks later, I was sitting in my kitchen when the doorbell rang. Through the window, I could see a woman in a business suit holding an official-looking envelope. My hands shook as I signed for the delivery. The return address made my stomach clench. Morrison and Associates, Family Law. Inside were divorce papers, real ones, professionally prepared, with legal language that made everything terrifyingly official. Petition for dissolution of marriage, temporary custody arrangements, asset division proposals. Jonas wasn't playing games anymore. I called him immediately, but it went straight to voicemail. I tried his father's house, no answer. I even tried his work, but his assistant said he was in meetings all day. Finally, at 7 p.m., he called me back. "Did you get the papers?" he asked without preamble. "Jonas, please. We need to talk about this, face to face. We've talked enough. I've made my decision. But counseling... Araminta, I went to counseling. By myself. I've spent the last month trying to figure out if there was any way to save our marriage. And I've realized there isn't. Because of one kiss? Because of who you are." His voice was calm again, that terrible professional calm that was somehow worse than anger. "Because you've shown me that when you're unhappy, instead of talking to me about it, you'll find someone else to confide in. Because you've shown me that you're willing to lie to protect yourself, even when the lie hurts other people. Because you've shown me that you think of our marriage as something that's supposed to entertain you rather than something we build together. I can change. Can you? Because even now, 3 weeks later, you're still calling it one kiss. You're still minimizing what you did. You're still trying to convince me that I'm overreacting." I wanted to argue, but Jonas was right. I kept calling it a mistake when it was betrayal. He said Ellery would be fine with shared custody, but our marriage wouldn't. Love wasn't enough without trust, and trust wasn't, promise you won't kiss again. Trust was telling the truth before getting caught, talking to your spouse instead of someone else, treating the marriage as valuable instead of boring. His terms were fair, 50-50 custody, clean asset split. If I refused, he'd take it to court and let everything become public record. Lawyers told me the same thing. He had evidence, witnesses, receipts, posts. I signed. On the courthouse steps, Jonas said it was never about him being boring or Simon being exciting. It was about me not knowing what I wanted. 6 months later, Simon and I crossed paths in a grocery store, both divorced, both wrecked. "Was it worth it?" he asked. "No," I said. And that was the first honest thing I'd said in a long time.